Good evening. It is time for today's Tax Talk. I'm your host. I'm attorney Stephen Leahy. It is Thursday, November 10th, the year of our Lord 2022. Uh, lots of it, a lot of stories recently about the Criminal Investigation Unit of the IRS and what we should expect. That's what we're going to talk about a little bit about today. Won't you join us? Okay, so here we are at the precipice of IRS, right? They're doubling the size of the IRS. The whole goal, right? They're going into enforcement. They want to collect more money from those who aren't paying. And one way to do that. Now, this was going on before COVID, and in my office, I help people with IRS problems, as you probably know, and I had some before COVID. Now I had several revenue officers visit my office, and they alerted me that the new policy was that they should be out in the field more. Field means going to your house, right? Knocking on your door, going to your job, letting you know that they're after you. Because why? Because they get better results that way. It's amazing how people can come up with money when they think they're going to go to jail. And now the revenue officers aren't criminal. They although they do flash badges and they do try to come across as law enforcement, in my opinion, sometimes, not all of them, but some do. And the criminal investigation unit will start coming out to your home. I don't know if you know this, right? But not filing your tax return is a crime. Now, not very many people go to jail because of it. Some high-profile people do. Remember Wesley Snipes? Now, he was a tax protester, and so they pled down to not filing his tax returns, and he did. He had 3 years of unfiled tax returns. He got 3 years in prison, 1 year for every unfiled tax return. So and of course that comes out, and look for these stories to start popping up now in December, January, February. Because the IRS wants to send you a signal. The signal is pay your taxes or we're coming after you. Now, I talk a lot about this on this show about most people who don't file their tax returns. It's not because they're trying to be criminal and they're trying to not pay their taxes. It's that they get intimidated or they don't know what to do, and then they crawl into a hole. And 1 year turns into 2, turns into 5 fairly quickly. So they're not trying to cheat, but it's still, you might not try to. Well, I was going to say speed, but it's not quite the same, because speeding's, while it's a criminal act, I guess it's not in the same realm. But again, when they start coming after you, when the IRS knocks on your door and the guy has a badge and a gun, you get your attention. And I think that's what they're trying to do. And so I've been saying for some time now that we should be expecting this. This is part of the enforcement. I know that they're saying that they're telling you, no, don't worry about it. We're only going after people with $400,000 or more. That's not how they're going to close the tax gap with and they know that, and they always couch that whenever they say the $400,000 or more, they always kind of give themselves a little bit of a leeway. And now the election's over, they won't even do that, right? Because the fact is they're coming after people to pay the taxes so they can collect on them, so they can spend them. That's just the way it is. So let's go to some stories. First, I wanted to read this. First, let's go to this. I think I have it up. I don't have it up. Let's see if I can get it up here. I knew I could. Okay, so let's go back. There we go. Here we are. Okay, so this is from the news of the IRS.gov. If you go to IRS.gov, And again, I remember right before COVID reading these stories. And this one is from February of 2020. So right before COVID, right? COVID hit in March 2020. So the Internal Revenue Service announced it will visit more taxpayers who haven't filed tax returns for prior years in an effort to increase tax compliance and further enforce the law. In addition, now again, if they're trying to enforce the law, that's not a revenue officer. That's not enforcing the law. I guess it is enforcing the law, but it's not. That sounds more criminal. In addition, the IRS is increasing the use of data analytics, research, and new compliance strategies, including personal visits, to reach taxpayers and tax return preparers who have not filed federal tax returns. The goal of these strategies is to bring delinquent taxpayers into compliance with their filing and payment tax obligations and promote future tax compliance. To further promote voluntary compliance with tax laws, the IRS is also using new ways to leverage existing processes and systems, including increase the identification and case creation for individual and business non-filers. New cases will be assigned to IRS employees for appropriate resolution. Automated substitute for return program. Now, this is something that I've been talking about, and it's really starting to come into its own now. It used to take some 3, 4, 5 years before the IRS would do a substitute for return for you. And just so you know, a substitute for return is when the IRS prepares a tax return for you, right? So just to be clear, right, the IRS can't collect a tax from you until it's been assessed, and it gets assessed when you file a return. But if you don't file a return, the tax doesn't get assessed, and they're not collecting on it. And so to fix that gap, the IRS will complete a tax return for you. Again, this is called a substitute for return. It's not a service. They're not doing you a service, right? It's really a penalty because they exaggerate what you owe because they don't give you any deductions. And so all of a sudden you owe a lot more tax than you would have had you done the return yourself. Now, again, this used to take 4, 5, 6 years before the IRS got around to it. And then they would do a bunch of years in a row. And now the problem with that is that it extends the statute of limitations. So now that 5 years ago, if they came 5 years, now that's 15 years they could collect on that tax return. But now in an effort, and this was the same thing with payroll taxes. Payroll taxes, they used to take some years before they came after people. And by the time the IRS would come out to see you about payroll taxes, it was too late. Your business is really over. You owed so much, you're never going to be able to pay the IRS, and they're going to shut you down. But now with electronic filing and with payroll taxes, it's automatic. It's required now. And so payroll taxes are filed. And now the IRS is coming out in 1 quarter or 2 quarters. If you miss a quarter, they're coming out and they're visiting you and saying, hey, where's the payroll tax? Now that's happening now with these SFRs for individuals. Most individual returns are filed electronically. If they're not filed, they know they're not filed, yet they still get the information returns, the 1099s and other information returns. So then the IRS will use those information returns and file your tax return for you. This is what Elizabeth Warren wants to do, right? She wants to just say, hey, we're going to do it all for you. It's going to be free. Thanks, Elizabeth Warren. But it's not a service. That's not good for you. They're going to look at what you owe. They're going to look at all these information returns, and they're going to prepare a return for you. This is what you owe, and that's what you're going to pay. Right? And the tax code, be damned. So this is what the problem is. So let's go back to the story. So the automated substitute for return. Again, this is happening almost individual. This affects individual taxpayers who have not filed the tax returns, but whose available income information shared with the IRS indicates a significant income tax liability. As part of this program, the IRS sends notices to these taxpayers, alerting them to the potential liability. Automated 6020B process promotes employment tax filing compliance by identifying business taxpayers with employment tax requirements who have not filed for a specific period, ensuring business compliance with their employment tax filings and payment requirement is another priority for the IRS. Delinquent Return Refund Hold Program systematically holds an individual taxpayer's income tax refund when their account has at least one unfiled tax return within the 5 years surrounding that tax return. Okay, so, right, as it stands now, if you don't file the tax return, you still get your refund because there hasn't been a tax success, so you don't owe the IRS any money. Now, a lot of times the IRS won't even let you know because they owe you money. And they don't want you to know that. That's why it's 5 years and not 3 years. Because after 5 years, after 3 years, that 5 years is beyond the 3 years. So then you don't get that refund. Okay, so if you have a refund coming, you don't get it. Okay, so that's in addition, the IRS is working with key partners to better educate taxpayers and tax professionals on filing requirements. If I'm a tax professional, do you think I know the filing requirements? Well, the answer is I should, right? The IRS reminds taxpayers that many non-filers are actually owed refunds. I just mentioned that. And they are also encouraged to look into filing their tax returns. The deadline for claiming refunds on 2006 tax returns is April 15th, 2020. Well, then that changed because I think the date was then changed to July 15th because of COVID. Remember, they expanded the date for filing tax returns. For taxpayers who haven't filed in previous years, the IRS has current and prior tax forms and instructions available at the irs.gov or by calling taxpayers who are missing you can get them from the tax transcripts. So anyway, I wanted to read that because that was right before COVID. That's when I started hearing it. It was right before COVID. Hey, that's the same. That's not where I got that picture, but that's interesting. Okay. Anyway, I had them telling me this right before COVID, and so now I'm seeing it coming into play. For the last 2 years, they haven't been making these field visits because COVID. They were all working from home, but now that's over. They're not working from home, and they can go out to your home now, and that's what they're doing. So here, this is IRS Criminal Investigation had 90% conviction rate for fiscal year 2022, which ended September 30th, I think. IRS Criminal Investigation initiated more than 2,550 criminal investigations, identified more than $31 billion from tax and financial crimes. Much of these were not tax crimes. I don't know if I should pull that up, but and obtained a 90.6% conviction rate on cases accepted for prosecution on the annual report. I'm not going to go through this annual report, and I could pull it up, but there's some. Let's see if I can pull it up quickly. No, I reviewed this report. There's a lot in it about what they're doing. So here it is. And here's the message. But this is the pie chart. I want to point out here on the left, you see this 5.7 billion tax fraud identified. 5.7 billion. A lot of money, but not in the scheme of things, not that much. 26.9 billion other identified financial crimes. So not tax fraud. The criminal investigation of the IRS is doing more than just tax fraud. Right? They're doing investigations to other crimes, financial crimes. Well, they're the IRS. They should be better at financial crimes. Better than the Department of Justice? Better than the FBI? That's what's wrong with this. As they get more money, their jurisdictions creep into one another. We've seen this with almost everything with the government, but with crypto, right? With the commodities futures exchange and the Securities Exchange Commission, they're fighting over who gets to regulate. And so right now, both of them are regulating. So you got tax crimes, non-tax crimes, cyber crimes, sanctions-related investigations. So sanctions because they're going after the Russians. I mean, this is where we are. So the report details significant criminal enforcement actions from the past fiscal year, which began October 1st and ended September 30th, 2022. The cases the team investigated over the past fiscal year touch multiple continents and require cooperation with partners around the globe. This is why the unit continues to cement itself as a preeminent law enforcement agency investigating financial crimes on a global scale. So I'm not going to read all these, but here's another good story. IRS is dealing with hundreds of crypto-related cases, and this is all criminal. Internal Revenue Service is currently dealing with hundreds of crypto-related cases. After this, the most frequent case that comes in is often related to off-ramping. Off-ramping is when people sell their crypto for fiat currency, like dollars. So this is IRS braces for spike in digital asset tax fraud. So they're placing all these. This is not a coincidence that these stories are being placed in the news and that you're hearing it, right? They're alerting all of us. Hey, the criminal investigation unit of the IRS is getting bigger, and we're going to start using it to collect money. That's what's going to happen. And so if you have unfiled tax returns, now's the time. You don't want to visit from the IRS about this. And again, they're coming to your home now and your place of business. And it's, I got to tell you, when the IRS knocks on your door and flashes the badge, it gets your attention. Maybe some people need that attention to make a move and do something. But don't let you be that one. Make a move, do something. That's my advice. So anyway, that's where we are. I want to thank you so much for joining us here today. Remember, I'm going to ask you to like and subscribe. Like and subscribe. We need your help to get this information out to people. Who else is telling you about the Criminal Investigation Unit of the IRS? Have you heard anybody except for these stories they're planting to scare the bejesus out of you? If you have an IRS problem, if you have unfiled tax returns and you don't know what to do, first thing you should do, get a copy of my book, Deal with Your IRS Problem Today. Go to freeirsbook.com. I'll pay for the printing. I'm going to ask you to pay for the shipping and handling. It's less than $10. So go to freeirsbook.com. There's also other free reports. Free. I'm not going to charge you for them. You know, the 6 things you can do if you owe the IRS money. The 3 things you should never say to the IRS. And maybe that's something you should know now if they come knocking on your door. Right? The 4 things you should know if you have unfiled tax return. One of those 4 things is that it's a crime. You should know that. Okay, so thanks so much for joining us. I appreciate you taking the time, and we'll see you. Now, tomorrow I have Tomas Cabrera. He's a personal injury attorney. He's going to be with me tomorrow at about 2. We're going to stream live. It's going to be live, not live. It's going to be broadcast on AM 560, The Answer, on Saturday at 7, the Trust Radio Network. You can listen to us there, or you can visit us on the stream tomorrow at all of our streaming locations. So thanks so much for joining us. I look forward to seeing you again soon. God bless you.